The next person who will present is Iana Trichkova from the Southern Association for Psychotherapy and Counselling. She's conducting currently her PhD research at the University of Roehampton with particular focus on psychotherapist sexuality. She's also a visiting lecturer at the Regent's University, and she has a private practice and also works in forensic setting. She's going to satisfy today your curiosity about what gets in the way of working with clients who have been sexually abused. It's a heuristic inquiry. Iana, over to you.
Thank you, Diana. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure I can satisfy your curiosity about what gets in the way of other therapists working with sexually abused clients. I think it's what got in the way of my working with sexually abused clients. And I'll read a little bit of my paper. Before that, I just wanted to start out. I have two different ideas about research, and one is very exciting. About getting to know myself and people and learning. The other one is quite restrictive, is the PhD side, is filling forms, is presenting it to the university in an acceptable form. It's publishing and then responding to reviewers that are very helpful sometimes, but in this paper, I had to answer questions of how my research could be replicated or verified, which I thought was taming at best and at worst castrating. So this is, I think, goes along with the theme of the conference. But let me read a little bit. I'm not sure how much time I'll have, so I'll have to skip a few things.
I'll remind you of the time as we go along. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So this study was a rather painful journey, which started with my first and only session with Lucy. Lucy is a made-up name, of course. Lucy came to counseling after a long career as a service user of different mental health organizations. She often experienced psychotic episodes and had been diagnosed with schizophrenia. Because of the complexity of her case, I had even though I know there is an argument against doing this, had discussions with, I had read her assessments, I had discussions with the service manager and her social workers to carefully prepare myself for working with her. I knew she wanted to talk about her dysfunctional family and the sexual abuse she was exposed to in her early teenage years. Looking back now, I realize how naive I was to believe that reading her assessment could prepare me to see her and hear Lucy talk about her uncles, who, as she put it a few times, did insist on her. She gave me a very detailed and graphic description of what had happened to her, but it was not her words that affected me. In fact, they were the exact same words she used during her assessment, and I suspected they were a result of her numerous interactions with various mental health practitioners. It was the way she said them. She spoke slowly and flatly with a faint, distant smile, and even though she did not drop her gaze while talking to me, I could not help but think that the light in her eyes had been extinguished years ago. In front of me was an adult woman who, at the moment I saw, was the lost little girl who had endured horrible suffering. I wanted to comfort her and rescue her from her pain that I didn't see, but I assumed was hidden beneath her numbness. I felt powerless and lost. I also felt a sizzling grip of anger crawling all over me. I was furious at her uncles for using her however and whenever it pleased them, at her mother for not being there for her, at the deranged world we live in, for allowing such adversities to happen, and at myself for not knowing how to help her. I became overwhelmed by my reactions and by images that I later realized were reminiscent of my own experience of being sexually assaulted. For what seemed like a long time, I stood in front of her stiff and rigid, almost afraid to breathe. I did not know where she noticed that she did not attend the next session, and later sent an email to the service stating that she wanted to discontinue counseling. Maybe Lucy was not ready to have therapy. Maybe having one session made her aware that it would be a challenging and very painful process. I will never know why she stopped after only one session, but I do know that what she brought to this session evokes something so powerfully frightening and disturbing for me that I completely disengaged from my client, and I left her alone with the horror of the story she was telling me. My experience in that session with Lucy left me wondering what went wrong and wanting to explore what might get in the way of working with clients who have been sexually abused. Before working with Lucy, I had believed that I had enough understanding of the issues related to sexual abuse, but in hindsight, I realized it was just a cognitive, intellectual understanding, which I used to protect myself, both from the horror of her story and the pain of my own experience of abuse that would trigger it in me. This single session with Lucy was so significant for me that I needed to make sense of it and explore my own experience and attempt to compare it with and understand the experiences of other colleagues. And since that was master's dissertation, I tried to be a very good student and follow the book. So I tried to at least keep some structure and started with a literature review. And for the literature review, I used the thematic analysis described by Brown and Clark, which was very, very structured. I just read you the different phases, familiarizing with the data, generating initial codes, searching the themes, reviewing the themes, defining and naming the themes, producing the report. I read this recently. I thought, well, this is just a very complicated way of saying, well, you just do some close reading and you find what moves you in the literature you read. The other thing that struck me, that I did find a lot of useful information, but it was mostly focused on, it wasn't exactly focused on what might hinder my work with my clients. Some texts were used to describe how working with sexually abused clients impact therapists, but the emphasis was on the therapist's self-care. And most of the texts were focused on giving recommendations of what to do rather than suggest what not to do. So everything was important and informative, but it did not give me the answers I was looking for. And then, either randomly or someone might say serendipitously, I came across a poem, and I'll try to share it with you, or at least part of it. Oh, my host has disabled the screen sharing. Okay, so I will just read it to you. And the poem is by Sharon Olds, and it's called Ode with Silence in it. Part of it goes like this. Rape is rape, which alters where its alteration finds and bends with the remover to remove. Legitimate rape, politicians said. Rape born to rape's legal parents. Parent rape, family rape, date rape, gang rape, priest and rabbi rape, coach rape, rape of 8-year-olds, 8-month-old, morning rape, noon rape, night rape, spring rape, summer rape, fall rape, winter rape, and it goes on forever, based in my experience. And I'm reading it because reading this poem just helped me think of research of being less informative, but more evocative, and that's something I'm trying to find how to do and find a balance.
5 minutes.
All right. So going on the evocative part of the research, I think Liz was very much more eloquent than me in describing heuristic research, which I've also used for my little study. So I'll just go to the last part of it, and the findings of the research were I interviewed people, I did through all the phases. I did some individual depictions, composite depictions, exemplary portraits, very faithful to the method described by Mustafa's. But I think what was really impactful and really significant for me was what in this method is called creative synthesis. I'll try to read it very quickly. It's a letter to my client, Lucy. Dear Lucy, you may not remember me because we met only once, but I remember you. I remember how you sat opposite me and told me you felt anxious, but seemed absolutely calm. I remember how 5 minutes after the start of our session, you told me that you were sexually abused as a child. And then you proceeded to give me all the details, what your uncles did to you, when, how the abuse happened, how many times, for how long, how your mother and grandmother knew but did nothing to help you, and how you wished you had a father, because maybe he would have saved you. What you were telling me was horrible, but you kept talking flatly and steadily, as if you were reading from an invisible book, and I could not help wondering how many times you had already said the words, my uncles did incest on me, and how many times you were failed by the people who heard these words. Lucy, I'm writing this letter to you because I think I failed you too. I do not know why you decided to discontinue therapy after only one session, but I do know that I was not able to be there for you while you were talking about what happened to you. At first I felt so overwhelmed and shocked by what I heard that I wondered if you were telling me the truth. Then I got really angry with your uncles for raping you and the other adults who neglected you and left you alone in your suffering. What really horrified me was the deadness in your eyes while you were talking. My imagination painted an image of you lying motionless and lifeless, waiting for your uncles to finish raping you. It was too much to bear, so I retreated to myself. I stopped thinking, I stopped feeling. I heard every word you said clearly, but they just seemed to bounce off me. I imagine that at that moment, I looked just as frozen and lifeless as you. So there we were, two women who were in the same room, but who could not meet each other as each one of us had entered their own dreadful torture chamber. For a long time, I tried to...
1 minute.
Okay, I'll speed through it. I tried to convince myself that this was just my reaction to the horrible things that happened to you. But something about it kept bothering me, something that did not quite make sense. Now I know that what my imagination showed me during our sessions was not a picture of you, but a memory of me lying still, playing dead while waiting for the man who was sexually assaulting me to finish. You see, it's not that I had forgotten it. I just put it aside for a long time because I could not face looking at what happened to me. The story opened an old wound that I had ignored, hoping that not giving it any significance would make it disappear. It was not as horrible as you want. My own pain prevented me from being there for you and putting you first. By being so unaware of myself, I unwittingly became like your uncles, who disregarded your feelings and took care only of their needs. I joined all the people who could have helped you, did not because they were too busy with their own lives.
We need to stop.
Last paragraph.
Okay.
Okay, very quickly. Lucy, your story shook me and took me to a journey that I should have undertaken years ago. I'm grateful because what you shared with me made me look at my own story, and even though it was painful, I think it helped me become a freer person and hopefully a somewhat better therapist. But I also feel tremendous guilt because I was the one who was supposed to help you, and I'm sorry for failing to do so. Yours, me, Iana.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We have 5 minutes for discussion talk. So if anybody would like some questions, I think it's better if you put your hands up, and then that's how we're gonna. Is anybody who would like to? Just need to go through the screen because there's so many people that. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I can see Helen. Would like to ask a question, please? We can't hear you, Helen.
Hi. Yeah, I was just curious. This is an email to the client, right?
Letter, yes.
Did you get a response?
Yeah. No, it's a hypothetical letter. It's imaginary.
Ah, okay.
Yes, I did not send it to her. No.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone?
I just wanted to say thank you for that talk. It was very powerful. Thank you very much.
I can see that Louise would like to ask a question. Please, Louise.
Yeah, hello, Iana. Thank you for your talk. I just got one comment to make, really, is that it felt like an incredibly honest piece of speaking, and thank you.
Thank you. I think that's what I'm trying to figure out. This is the way I would like to do research, be very honest with myself and not get swayed into theories. I'm aware they're very useful and not sweat. I think, Tony, you mentioned it earlier, it's not trying to please the university, not trying to replicate my experience and verify it. But I find this very hard.
I was struck by the question Helen asked you, Iana. It was a question of whether you actually sent the email, and it was an hypothetical letter. And that reminded me of the conversation we had earlier on when I started, whether this kind of expression belongs to literature, whether maybe there is no space for this in research the way it is. Research opens itself up to another world, which to me is the world of literature. Like this letter might be read by somebody else, not your client, and might resonate with them. And that makes it even more effective.
I still haven't given up on research. I think you're right, man. But there is some hope in me that we will be able to do research and develop this therapist. I haven't given up on academia in my lifetime yet.
It's a pity.
I can see Tony's got a question. Last one.
Again, it's not a question, it's just a feedback, really. I suppose it shows the kind of resources of the human spirit are much more powerful than any kind of bloody research can offer, you know. Excuse the language. But, you know, because it's your own spirit that responded there, isn't it? Your own self.
I was thinking, isn't it a pity that there isn't something maybe even new, a new paradigm for bridging something about those two things, you know, Because does it just lie in literature or does it just lie in research? It's as if there's something between there.
We're going to have to stop, but thank you. It's an interesting question. And thank you very much, Iana, for your presentation.